In this Programming for Artists tutorial, I'm going to talk about how you can declare your own variables. We've already used some variables in our p5.js sketches. We've used built-in variables in the p5.js library. Here in this sketch, we've used MouseX and MouseY. This keeps track of MouseX and MouseY, where it is on the screen, and then it draws the ellipse in that location. So we can have a bit of movement with our mouse and then showing where the ellipse is. And then we also learned that we could use MouseIsPressed. This is a variable that decides if the mouse is pressed or not. So here we have if mouse is pressed, then it fills into a 0, which is black, and otherwise it fills in as 255. We're going to talk more specifically about conditional statements later, but that's what this is doing right here. So let's go ahead and delete this. So I'm going to delete this conditional statement here and then run the sketch again, and I'll actually turn on auto refresh. And so now we just have the ellipse moving around and covering the page. And you might be wondering, why is it drawing many circles instead of just having one circle with the background? That's because our background draw command is up here in the setup. And remember, the setup only runs once. So if I remove this and I put it down into the draw function, then we're going to see that the mouse moves the ball around just like this. And then every time the background is redrawn, so it gives the appearance of animation. But this means that I have to actually animate everything. What if I wanted to have the ellipse move around on its own, so I didn't have to move it with the mouse? Or maybe I wanted to do other things with the mouse. I wanted the mouse to move a spaceship, and I want the ellipse to be an alien that I'm shooting lasers at. Well, then we have to have the ellipse move on its own. And one of the ways we can do that is use variables. But what is a variable? A variable is just a store of a value. It can store numbers, it can store letters, it can store arrays, it can store things that are true or false, many different things. We have to do a few things to be able to use a variable. We have to declare the variable, so give it a name, and then we have to give it an initial value, and then we have to use the variable. So how do we do those things? At the top of setup, I'm going to write a variable. I'm going to say let. So basically this command is saying let this variable, and I'll call it myVariable. I'm going to say let myVariable and then equals 57. So what I've done here is I've said let myVariable equal the value of 57. So let's go ahead and see if we can then use myVariable. So we've now declared it and initialized it with an initial value. And then here I can put myVariable. And so now we can see that I can still move it up and down with mouse Y, but my variable here is the X. Okay, so this is kind of fun. And if I change my variable to say 90, it automatically updates and goes over. So this is a really great way that we can update things in code, because you can imagine I can start using my variable in many different places. And then this way it doesn't get hard coded as a value. So we don't always want to hard code values in. We want to be able to update our code within reason, and using variables makes it dynamic. There's also other things that we can do. We can change the value of a variable. If I come down here into function draw and I type myVariable equals 344, suddenly my variable is right here. Now you may notice that I don't have the let here with my variable. You only declare a variable once. So we use let to declare the variable, and then we can reassign the value of the variable with a single equal sign. We'll talk about comparing variables later with double and triple equal signs, but to assign a value, use a single equal sign. We can do another thing. We could say myVariable equals myVariable minus 1. this isn't doing anything right now because in the function draw, my variable gets set to 344. We draw the background, we draw our ellipse, we -1 from my variable, and then we go ahead and reassign it to 344. But if I delete this, and then I put 344 up at the top, now it starts over at the edge of the screen, and then each time through the draw loop, it subtracts 1. And now it's gone. It's not coming back. We'll talk about how to use conditional statements to bring the ball back, but we can change the value of the variable dynamically. We could also start my variable, let's say at 0, and then we could have it be +1. Now it's moving across the screen 1 pixel every time through, and now it's gone. Let's see if we could add another variable to our sketch. So I'm going to say my y equals 1. And I'm going to go ahead and change my variable to my x equals 0. And then I'm going to change this to my x. And then this will be my y. I'm going to change both of these. So now we have the same program as we had before. We have my x incrementing as it goes across. Well, we could also do the same thing to my y. And now we have it moving down in a diagonal way. So we can have motion going in multiple ways. And we could change the rate of this. So we could change this to be 6. And now it's going to move across much faster, right? We can also have it be 0.5. And it's going to move much slower. Another thing we could do is make this variable be speed. So we could type speed here. And then at the top, we could say let speed equal 0.2. And as you can see, now the speed is updating very slowly. And this shows you just a little bit of the power of the variable, because now I have 2 references to speed, and I can quickly change this myself. So I could change this to 15 or 14, and now we have lots of speed. Or I could change this to 100. And it's going to shoot straight across, just gone, right? Or I could change this to 0.001, and it's going to move ever so slowly, almost imperceptibly. Or if I change it to 0.1, we'll get a bit more movement. It's very slowly moving. Or just 0.1, and now we can actually see the motion happening. And you can imagine if I had speed written multiple times throughout the program, it would be very annoying and difficult to go change them all individually. So this is one of the ways we can use variables to customize our program and have a bit more fun with p5.js. Happy programming!